So Kevin and I will be presenting on Porphyrias. So here's a brief outline. We'll start with an introduction. We'll get into the genetic etiology, demographics, inheritance, diagnosis, treatment, and possible gene therapy, recent findings, and then we'll have time for questions. So for an introduction, porphyria are rare metabolic disorders that mainly affect the skin or the nervous system. These disorders are usually inherited, meaning they are caused by a gene mutation passed down from parent to children. And if you have porphyria, your cells fail to change chemicals in your bodies called porphyrins or porphyrin precursors into heme, the substance that gives blood its red color. And when these chemicals build up in your body, they cause this illness. And depending on the type of porphyria you have, porphyrins or porphyrin precursors, they build up in the liver or the bone marrow. And this disorder is divided into two groups, acute porphyria and cutaneous porphyria, depending whether they affect the nervous system or the skin. And on the two charts to the right, it's a rare disease still being studied, but they have discovered about 8 of them. And you can see how they're broken down and divided up. And so this is what it looks like. It's rare, but these are the photos that I was able to find online. So for the genetic etiology, porphyrias are a group of at least 8 related disorders that are primarily affect the skin or nervous system. Like I stated before, it's still being researched, so this is what they have found so far. They occur when there's an abnormality in the pathway for making heme. So heme is an essential molecule for living aerobic organisms, and it plays a major part in many biological processes. So heme is made in all tissues, but especially in the bone marrow and liver, and it's made in a series of steps with specific enzymes that make this pathway possible. So when there's a disruption in this pathway, then that's when you get the symptoms of porphyria. So each form of porphyria results from mutation in one of these genes that you see on the slide. There's 8 of them discovered so far for the 8 types of porphyrias. And these genes are related to porphyria because they provide the instruction for making the enzymes needed to produce heme. So mutations of these genes result in lower or reduced enzyme activity, which limits the amount of heme the body can produce. And as a result, compounds called porphyrins or porphyrin precursors, which are formed during the process of heme production, can build up abnormality in your body. So intermediates late in the pathway are porphyrins, and early in the pathway, they're called porphyrin precursors. So I won't get into like the actual pathway of making heme, but just for an example, CPOX, one of the genes that I have on the slide, it's like the 6th step, I think, in the process, and it's responsible for moving a carbon and an oxygen atom from the product of the 5th step, and so on. So it's all like a chain. And now for demographics. Like I said before, it is a rare disease, so studies suggest that all types of porphyria combined affect fewer than 200,000 people in the United States, so it is very rare. However, acute porphyria is most common in females and often begins between ages of 15 through 45. And on the other hand, cutaneous tarda porphyria, which is the skin, develops in people over the age of 40 and is usually seen in men. So now for the inheritance, since porphyria is rare, they're still studying this, like I said before, but each type of porphyria is inherited differently. Some types are inherited autosomal dominant, which means one copy of the gene in each cell is mutated. The single mutation is sufficient to reduce the activity of enzyme needed to produce heme, which increases the risk of developing signs and symptoms for porphyria. So autosomal dominant porphyrias include acute intermittent porphyria, hereditary coproporphyria, and variegate porphyria. And then other porphyrias are inherited autosomal recessive, which means they need both copies of the gene to have the mutation. And most often, these parents are carriers and they don't know they have the condition, and then it's passed on to their children. But they don't. The parents are carriers, so they don't really show signs and symptoms. And the ones with autosomal recessive pattern, of inheritance include the ALAD deficiency and congenital erythropoietic porphyria and hepatoerythropoietic porphyria. And then there's also one that's X-linked dominant. So the ALAS2 gene is located on the X chromosome, which women have two and males have one. So males that have this mutation obviously may experience more severe symptoms than a female. And then like we may ask ourselves like why is there so many different types of inheritance? Well, the number of copies of a gene that need to have a disorder causing variant affects the way the disease is inherited for this disorder specifically. And then I'll pass it on to Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Karla. For the di for the diagnosis, uh, uh, like doctors use a blood and urine test to like check for porphyrins, and they might also use a stool test to confirm it as well. If you have a family history of porphyria, they might use the blood test for a genetic testing for accurate results. And the treatments and possible gene therapy, the for the acute porphyria, they might use injections of the hemin, that is to like limit the body's productions of porphyrins, and to decrease heme synthesis and reduce the production of porphyrin precursors. They might use the glucose infusions. They might also use a Givlari medication, and that reduces the toxins. Treatments of the cutaneous. You should avoid sunlight and alcohol. Also, a blood draw should be used also to reduce the amount of iron in the liver. And for the recent findings, in 2021, the NICE approved the RNAi therapy. Um, it um it uses a treatment, the givosiran, and it prevents up to 74% of acute porphyria attacks, and it does this by using RNAi to stop cells making the enzyme ALA synthase 1. It intercepts the messenger RNAs that are copied from the ALSA1 gene, and it can destroy them before they can be used as a template to manufacture the enzyme. And here are our sources.